version of an MOU from Suffolk to the court. So it'll probably only go back and forth 5 other times.
Yeah, I'm personally more concerned, and I will say this on a recording, that the court hasn't gotten us the current versions of the 209A forms yet. So
yeah, that's the exhibits they're working on.
They can't change it that much.
We'll need to label the new forms, right? That's what, and see if there's anything different.
Well, so it's an interesting question. It depends on what the difference is.
Yeah.
If the difference is just we added a place to collect your phone number.
Yeah, didn't someone say they thought it was like maybe just adding a little more contact info?
Yeah, I think that's it. Although so the court departments are taking this differently. I think some of them are saying we don't need an affidavit, and some of them are saying we do want the affidavit. So it's possible that it's the addition of things like phone numbers and then the subtraction of entire things.
If the courts are saying we don't need an affidavit but would still take one, it makes me very nervous to not have an affidavit. Like,
yeah. So
that's the record. Like, how would you appeal that?
Right. This is the problem, and this actually came up in one of the This is one of the things that came up in one of the Mary Moe cases, because they didn't have an affidavit, because there was a Mary Moe case that, for those of you who aren't familiar, that's the minor seeking a abortion case, and it was a situation where they were in a household where they didn't want the people in the household knowing, and blah 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 blah. So, but yeah, so I think that's why I think that's what underlines our need to get something that has everything in it, because I think what's happening now is some of the courts are basically making decisions for expediency's sake, which are going to have adverse consequences for people down the line, and I don't want those getting calcified into practice as a consequence of that was just the easy thing for them to do.
Right, because it's like if the judge denies the 209A, you have so much less record to work with.
Yeah.
And as a lawyer, a lot of times the way 209As work is the client does it ex parte without a lawyer. And then, sometimes they manage to find a lawyer for the 10-day hearing. And like, if I'm the lawyer, the first thing I'm looking at is the affidavit, because there's usually not time to get the recording. So it would really, really hurt the ability of the person to be represented by a lawyer. And not that I represent defendants to 209As, but that's a huge due process issue.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, that's where I come from, because a lot of my clients were, yes, I concur. So I think the point is that if we have something good that they can then respond to, then that's something for them to respond to. And also, a number of different court departments have asked for the 209A. So basically all the court departments that accept 209As, which means that we can say, oh, well, you guys aren't being uniform. So here is what we have, which is our best attempt to be uniform in respect to the way things used to work as well. And then that will provide something for them to respond to. My expectation is that whatever we get to them will be a first pass, and then they'll respond to it. And then there's going to be an interesting question on their side as to what counts as assent for the court as a body, given that there are multiple court departments. But that is a bridge we will cross when we come to it. But yes, I agree with everything you're saying there.
I can't say you can't submit an affidavit.
Oh no, I don't think they'd say you can't submit an affidavit. Okay. But if you're, I think they're saying you don't need an affidavit. But they're only saying you don't need an affidavit because they don't have a way to collect the affidavit.
Right.
So, yeah. All right. Sorry, I didn't mean to derail things.
I started it.
Yeah.
Welcome to the stand-up meeting, everybody.
We've got enough people, right?
Mm-hmm.
How many people do you need?
We were waiting for you, Caroline.
I think a quorum is technically 15% of active members, where active members are defined as people who have commented on Slack in the past 24 hours.
Got it. Got it.
Okay.
We should be good then.
Well, I was busy commenting on Slack and suddenly realized it was 12:35.
I think maybe we just quickly start with Noel. Is there anything that I know you're working on that conservatorship form, is there anything that you need from us or any blocks that you're having on that?
So I just uploaded it to Wizard, which it just took. I'm saying this to David because you are the one that's going to look at my time log. And so when you see that it took me 3 hours, it's not because I'm like mulling around. It's just I'm like afraid I'm going to like misspell something. So anyway, the Wizard is done. I uploaded the code to the Trello card, so it's over in the the code needs to be QC'd. But I do want to do that flow chart before I wrap up my time here, because I do think that there are certain spots where I think we should make clear that certain fields need to be populated, and then there are times when it's redundant for you to repopulate certain things. So hopefully, I don't know if that's a Michelle question or a Matt, like I don't know who I would end up talking to about that, but I would like to have the flow chart done tomorrow and then show somebody it and explain what I mean, if that's helpful. But that's
You can share it to me because we've already done it, but I think it'll be useful to get somebody else who hasn't gone through that form and has an understanding of it to also, maybe we can either record it or I'm not sure, find somebody else who doesn't know, maybe one of the new volunteers, and see if they understand because now I've got an understanding of the form, I might not be the best person to get that flow chart. But I'm happy to look at it as well and just see if it makes sense to me.
Okay, yeah, I mean, we could record it and then I can talk through the flow chart, and then whoever wants to look back on it can. But I think that's kind of like a later on issue, but I do think it's confusing. So I just
I'm also just aware that, this is, your hours are up tomorrow. So we don't want to keep like bugging you if unnecessarily. So if we can try and prepare for like that handover, then that would be great. But yeah, thank you so much for doing that. I mean, that form was really a lot.
Oh my God. Yeah. I'm glad that's done. And like I said, I'm not going to like log off. So like, I'm going to be around. I just have exams next week. So anyway, so that's where I'm at. Okay.
Thank you. Is there anything else that we need to talk to Noelle about besides saying thank you for doing that 6-page piece?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I just want to say, I think Noelle, like, honestly, I mean, I don't know how we would have done these guardianship forms without you at this point.
No, I feel like I did. I still am trying to figure out what I'm doing. So, but I think the onboarding ended up being so smooth. Like I was so happy to see like what you and Maeve and I don't know. You guys did a really good job. So I'm happy to be a part of it. And I'm interviewing for like attorney positions, and I always go back to this project, which is nice to talk about.
Cool. Well, I'm glad that you had a good experience with us, and that you'll also be contactable. I don't think you need to stick around for the rest of the meeting if you want to start on the flowchart, if you have other work to do.
Okay.
Because I think we're going to start talking about 209A SME stuff, which is going to be fun.
Okay.
But yeah, thank you very, very much.
For a little bit more, so I'll be around. So let me know if you need anything.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Okay, so that's where we're at on the conservatorship. Now, 209A. We've got the new assembly line 209A channel specifically for the batch of forms, and Kate is now the 209A czar. Who's going to try and wrangle all these forms and stitch them into one. I'm saying this because we all know this anyways, but maybe somebody out there doesn't.
Yeah, no, it's good.
So we have all the SMEs on there.
Just to be clear, czar just means like
point person
is the wrangler and point person on the
Yes, well, it's czar in the governmental use of czar, not in. So there are very often in governmental bureaucracies, a czar is appointed as someone to help steer the ship. So it's a term of art. Yeah, so it's a governmental term of art that unfortunately, without that knowledge, sounds like dictator.
Yeah. Okay. With that clarification, maybe we can just get an update on where we are. I know there was programming yesterday.
Yeah, I think a lot of progress has been made on a lot of the forms. The only one I think that really hasn't been touched at all is defendant confidential info. And I think and to some degree, plaintiff confidential info, which I think was started, but still never finished.
I'm working on defendant today with Emma.
And then, Michelle, are you still going to try to do the plaintiff confidential information form?
Is that the one I was doing with Michelle?
I think you did complaint page 2 yesterday.
I did
You didn't
complaint
do
page
the
2, and I
yeah.
also did something with
Kim,
Kim,
You did
that was
impoundment.
something else. Yeah.
impoundment.
Makes sense for
Okay,
me to
I
do
can
both
try.
of the confidential information forms if they're
Sure.
similar enough.
It does.
I found that when I was talking with Sarah yesterday, that for example, the 209A child support affidavits, that we only had to do paired programming for one for me to be able to do both of them. And if you think, Kate and Caroline, if that's going to be the case for the confidential information forms, then I think it saves time for the project as a whole for me to do both.
I mean, they're both straightforward forms. They ask for different sets of info, but they're structured, I would say, similarly.
And I see Caroline nodding there, and you're muted, Caroline.
They're not really any conditional fields in those. They're not really connected to any of the other forms apart from just straight information. So it's not like they.
True forms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
And they're standalones. I
Yeah.
mean,
That's what I was gonna
right.
say. Yeah, there's
so just let me just say, I mean, I know it sounds stupid, but we did get these forms mixed up before. So remember that it's just a defendant it's not confidential.
Oh,
It's a defendant information form, just
No,
straight.
that's worth mentioning. Yeah.
Okay. It's just the plaintiff's confidential form because that information can't go out.
Right. Then I think if that's the case, if I'm doing those today, Kate, and after that, are we truly at the point where we're just trying to stitch all these together? We don't need to do any more paired programming. Am I right about that?
I think so. I think they would need to, whatever follow-up came out of the paired programming, and they would probably, whatever it takes to get them to being like debugged.
Complaint page 2 isn't complete because it depended a lot on like input about other parts of the form. So
Yeah,
like
and I
we
think-
got a certain amount of way with it, but it was limited.
And I think those
Yeah.
questions would be a good use of that channel about how the forms
Yeah.
interact.
Kate, I think it would be good to have a discussion amongst the people on the chat, like a Zoom, about the best way. And maybe, I put up a Google Doc, but then I
Yeah.
realized you guys were already having those conversations earlier. But to really hash out what order, and that would make it a lot easier for programmers and coders.
Yeah, that was something, I think Quentin suggested that too, maybe doing like some Zoom calls
Yeah,
with the
yeah.
relevant people.
Mm-hmm.
with everybody on, I mean, like almost like kind of like a daily stand-up, but for the things so that everyone can chime in and everyone, so we don't have to have all these separate conversations that
Right.
then also need to be stitched back up. I think
Yeah,
that
exactly.
getting all the relevant
Mhm.
people into one
Mm-hmm.
call, and maybe if we need help with availability, I'm happy to liaise that.
Would it make sense to maybe start that tomorrow, because then work will have been done, I think, on every form? And hopefully every form will have had its initial paired programming.
Sure.
I'm just throwing that out there.
I think
I mean,
part of it
If all
depends
the
on.
legal people have read all the forms, because it's not like, but it could be valuable, yeah.
I think it
In
makes
that
oops,
context.
my music again. No, I think it
No,
makes
you're not
sense, as you're saying, Kate, to start tomorrow because some of them we're just at a standstill because of the way it's primarily page 1, page 2, and page 1, page 2, affidavit of care, and plaintiff affidavit for requesting child support. And those are all mixed into each other. It's really about how we ask about the children and the questions we ask about the children. And so I think that makes sense to talk sooner rather than later. All the forms don't need to be done for that logic to fit in, because the other ones, like plaintiff confidential information, defendant information, those
Not gonna
things.
change any of how you
Yeah,
figure.
it's not going to change anything.
Yeah.
So do y'all want a programmer along that can say this is how form questions can be arranged? Like
100%, I think, yeah. Yeah, I think the SMEs probably need someone to remind us of the limits.
Yeah, I can do
or
that
the
to a certain
capabilities.
extent.
Right.
Um,
Right. The capability. Sorry, Caroline. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just saying I can do that to a certain extent, and but I do think Michelle's idea of changing this idea of children, which I couldn't do in a previous lifetime, does make sense. But I think it makes more sense to I think the best thing to do is for not to have a programmer involved at first and have people go through, this is the way it should go, and then go from there. You know, ideally this is the way, and then can we do that, rather than sometimes you get limited by what technology can or can't do, and I think it can do a lot more than people realize. So just go through it and just
Well,
say,
that's actually more what I was thinking,
Yeah.
is that, like I did with the children, you might say something that you're like, maybe we can solve it this way and maybe we can solve it that way, kind of wrangling around
Mhm.
what the forms are now.
Mhm.
Whereas, you know, someone who had, you know, kind of a broader sense on the doc assemble
Big
side,
picture,
you
yeah.
know, could be thinking a bit above that and going,
Yeah.
actually, we could wrangle it slightly differently, and
Mhm.
that I think might be more
Yeah.
I think
appropriate
that's
to the
a really
form.
great point, Michelle. And
Mm-hmm.
uh, I think we've all learned a lot as programmers about how to keep quiet when we're supposed to, when we need to. So I think it would be valuable.
Okay.
Yeah. I think the other big question that needs to be answered in terms of how we do this is, and maybe this is a conversation for you, me, and Quentin, Michelle, but what is the workflow going to be like for putting all this together? To what extent is this a project that can be divvied up, or do we need to give it to one person to get it across the finish line? You and Quentin are probably going to have a lot more insight on that than me.
We will need to, I could be wrong. I mean, people might feel differently, but I'm pretty sure we will at some point either we will need to give it to one person, either with a discussion or without a discussion, but someone's going to have to make sure all the things, I mean, we can together, but it does need to be the whole thing. It can't just be, we can't just stitch the pieces together without an oversight. So
that was my fear. And I am.
It might be able to be done through simply, you know, like going through it with an SME. If it's
That's what I'm
relatively
thinking is,
smooth, then
yeah.
it would be. But if things are, but that needs to be a person looking at those things. And
Yeah, is that person going to be Quentin? I'm keenly aware that it cuts both for and against him that he is not here.
yes.
So
It could, we could try to make it more of a group effort with the PR and stuff like that. That tends to be.
You're right, though. I thought that I was thinking that way just because I have less experience than you, but I share your instinct that in the end, one person's going to have to finish tying the bow.
I think
Or
when
multiple
you
people
have,
on the same call, right? Like it doesn't, you don't have to put it onto one person, but surely
Yeah,
if
I'm not
somebody
sure
is
that would be
assisting
more
them.
efficient, though, is the thing. Like,
Yeah.
Only one person at the end, right?
Yeah. Like, yeah.
well, let's put it this way, one person's going to be typing into the keyboard. It could be a mob programming situation. It depends what people, from what I've seen, people's times don't align, and people power is needed. So if that is still the case, then yeah.
And
but
efficiency is key, as we put up.
But I don't know, we could also think about a mob program thing, since it does involve a bunch of different experiences coming together. It's worth considering. I'm going to think about that.
Plus,
Yeah.
you can have one person, you sort of need one person to finish the thought, but then you have other people go and review it. I mean, it's not done and dusted, but then you have other people.
It's sometimes better if you just have other people to start with, so that there's not a lot of back and forth, if you can do that with the time and the people you have, because the more back and forth, code is also difficult it's a very abstract concept to begin with. So it's better to talk about specific things, which is easier when it's in front of you.
Yeah. But I think, and you might be saying the same thing, or I might be misunderstanding that, like, there's a difference between saying somebody needs to put it all together and saying then that's getting deployed. I do think that once there is a flow through all the forms, that there will naturally be review that will be welcome.
Yeah, there will definitely be review, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so do we stand in terms of, just to loop back to that, 209A finishing up that individual. I think is a 209A page 2. The only thing that still needs paired programming, or am I missing something else? And the defendant and confidential
Affidavit of
defendant.
care. I think Quentin's working on the affidavit of care.
Okay.
Yeah, and what about the affidavit itself? Is that like ready to be, is that like complete or?
I think that's done. I did that with Kendall. I think that's done. There
Great.
might be something in there, but I think that's done.
So is like each individual form gonna go through that same debugging process?
If that's the PR that Kendall
Yeah.
made, then there is some stuff to do on it, including language. But I think once a couple of the bugs are worked out, then it will be done.
And this is the beast, right? Like there's like none of these individual forms were ever going to be like pristine 100% done and then we would stitch it together. Like
Yeah.
I think we're all on the same page that we're ready to start stitching together. And I think to close the loop and to use as much jargon as I can in one run-on sentence, ideally, whoever is going to be the programmer that's chiefly in charge of putting this all together would be the person you'd want on an SME call, right?
Yeah.
So that they could learn from that. I don't think we should wait on anything to decide who that is. I just wanted to voice that thought. I think Kate and Caroline, you should do what you got to do to schedule this call, and we'll figure it out, right?
Yeah, because we always could communicate, if that person ultimately isn't on the call, we can communicate whatever was talked about to that person.
Something else out, but
I'm going to be a little silly and say I'm starting to go back on my thought that it needs to be one person, considering how this
Whole
so
thing.
many people have had to be brought together. I think it's worth thinking about. I think I'm going to think about that. But
yeah, and that's exactly why I wanted to bring it up, Michelle, because
Yeah.
I wanted
yeah.
people, and by people I chiefly mean you, to think about it. Yeah.
Person.
I mean, the other programmers in the room, I totally hear you.
Yeah.
But I think that this is something that we can leave this call, think about it, and then comment in the chat, in the channel,
Yes.
and then by the time we come back to this meeting tomorrow at 12:30, we'll have some kind of, hopefully the SME call will be scheduled, and we'll have some kind of thought process of how we're going to proceed with stitching
Yep.
it together.
Should we try to do that call before the stand-up meeting tomorrow, like at
That's
11,
gonna
or
be
you think that's
tight.
too ambitious?
The ideal.
You think ideal orinideal?
Ideal, I think. Because it moves us forward a day, basically. Like
Yeah.
we make big decisions on this call.
Yeah. Caroline, could you do 11 tomorrow?
Yeah, I can do any time. You tell me. I'll schedule my
Wow.
whole thing around it because this is important.
Where's my, oh, I have,
But I think, you
what
have
day is today?
today's Wednesday, the whatchamacallit, 22nd. We
What
have
month?
because we have is it Ann Sheldon from GBLS just joined, and you've got Sarah and somebody
Anne
else.
will be able to do
Oh,
paired
and
programming,
Michelle
but she's awesome.
Sorry?
I said, I don't think Anne will probably have the time to do like paired programming, but she's really, really awesome.
Oh, I
and
wasn't
just-
thinking of paired programming. I'm thinking of us thinking through really
I think
how
she'll be
this.
good at that.
Yeah. And then there was all these questions about the under 18s and how we ask about defendant and that, the children over 18 and stuff. It might make sense that if you have children who are not under 18 at all, we suggest that they talk to a lawyer, because rather than try and include every possible, if they need to be included in the complaint, because obviously if they're over 18, they should have their own 209A.
This just sounds like such a great thing to discuss on that call.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I'll put that on a
That sounds like a good discussion item.
And now, if we just thinking of how many people we want on that SME call, how many is enough that it's enough to go ahead with that, say 11 o'clock or whatever? I'm looking at we've got like 13 people on the channel. So Caroline and Kate we've got for 11. Emma, Sarah, and Jennifer, Kim.
I think I'm comfortable. I think Kate will be able to make that decision on the fly. I think.
As the star. Yeah, we do
Maybe
that.
sometimes it depends who they are, right? So if you have like Ms. 209A on the call. That's pretty.
Is that you,
We-
Caroline?
No,
we-
no, it's not me.
Do you have a sash that you wear at home?
Caroline is one of those people. Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, Laura would obviously be a huge get. Kate.
yeah, I don't know if that might be a tough get.
Yeah, because it's not going to be a half-hour conversation either. That's
No.
why.
Yeah, and it might need to be done in 40-minute increments.
Yeah, I think Laura can give good feedback through summary
Right.
stuff, and she's
And I
provided
think-
some guidelines as well that she thinks are important.
That's
And
a
I
great.
don't think we need to finish it by 12:30. I think
That's
we
what I'm
can start,
thinking.
we start like with the first set of, I mean, we get to a certain point, and that's good enough to get us to 12:30, I think.
Yeah. I agree with that.
And I request that either it be recorded and or there are notes taken on why decisions were made, which I feel is just as important. When someone comes back later and says, wait, maybe we'll do it this way, right? And not the same people are in the room, then it's good to have a thing to point
Yeah.
to and go,
I think that's a good point.
look, I'm not a lawyer, but these are the reasons that lawyers gave. You know?
My one hesitation in recording.
Yeah,
and
that's
we
why
are
I'm
recorded
saying,
now,
like,
so I'm being.
yeah.
Is I feel like you have to think about some of these things, the way courts do things.
No, I agree. We can discuss
Frank
this part later.
conversations.
We can
Yeah.
discuss this part later, but that's why I'm saying there just needs to be some record, but it needs to be a good and thorough one
Mhm.
about why
People made the
certain
decisions.
decisions were made, so that it doesn't keep getting interrogated after it's already been decided.
Well, what makes sense is we're going to come up with some points at the end. We're going to come up with, this is the way we want to do it. And then we could just
If-
document why we
if-
made each decision. I think that
Okay,
that's fair.
I think you'll miss nuances along the way that are important if you do it that way, but if that's what can be done, then that's what can be done.
If you record it for internal purposes only, for people who, I mean, is that going to be an issue? And we're not going to
I don't
publish
know.
it
I feel
anywhere.
like there's never anything that's recorded just for internal purposes only. Anytime you
Right.
record something,
You have to
it's
risk it. Yeah.
recorded.
Yeah.
Spoken from your practice experience, correct, David?
Or
so-
Emily Post said, if you don't want it on the front of the New York Times, don't write it down.
Right. And I think the
So-
idea behind not recording here is just to be clear for the record, since we are being recorded now, it's simply one about being allowing people who are not the people in this group, but who we might want to pull in to be able to feel candid and free to
Mhm.
say something without second guessing themselves.
Right.
So for anyone watching this and being like, what are they talking about? That's what we're talking about. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Got it.
But I think, Kate, as the czar, you'll figure it out. You'll decide how you want to do it.
We can always take discussions offline if we need to.
Sidebar.
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. I think that wraps up our conversation on the 209A for the moment. We can take it over to the channel. Is there anything else that we need to talk about? I know I wanted to mention quickly about Quinton's wizard, the quality check wizard, but it's not really important for us. It's just an update to make sure you guys all knew about it.
To add to the confidential thing, I mean, there are some people who shouldn't be, seen on tape for sensitivity reasons anyway, right?
That is something that I'm doing a documentation on how to hide people's faces if you need to do a screen share or whatever. But yeah, no, I agree with that, Michelle. And we also are obtaining consent from people when we are recording and sending the video.
Two-party consent state.
Yeah.
Required statutorily.
So also just setting the video to their, for if they want to approve the video before it goes out, then they also get that option as well. So the wizard, Quentin's made a new wizard for quality checking, which is really good and it works perfectly now. There's just a couple of design things that I think would help, but other than that, it's like ready to go. So I'm adding that to the quality check, and with the next batch of forms, that's going to be really helpful. And
There's one thing that I think needs to be worked out, but I'll talk to him about it.
Could you give us a hint?
Yes, quotes and apostrophes are interfering with each other right now.
Oh, I think I'm talking about something else.
Oh, okay. This is the
Sorry, I'm
wizard.
talking about the form, the quality checking form.
Okay, not the wizard part.
Not the wizard, the one where you put your form through when you finish labeling it and finish quality checking the labels.
Oh, I see. Hey,
Sorry, I should be more
cool,
clear.
nice.
Yeah, it's a really cool thing, and it shows you. So it's basically the signature wizard, but better with more features, and it shows you at all the checkboxes have export values of yes, and it also shows you the labels. And it's
Nice.
it's gonna it's gonna be very helpful for the next batch.
That's awesome.
Other than that, I think that's all I have to say. Does anybody else have anything they want to raise? No? Just hearing crickets.
Well,
Okay, then that's all for today. We got
Right.
David.
yeah.
I was going to say, if after the stand-up call, if if Caroline, after you go, I think the rest of us are going to sit around and talk about something else.
Not you.
Not you. No, we're not going to.
That now
Except to
it
say all
really
nice
sounds
things.
convincing.
I need to talk to people about Kate's new elevation to her new czar-like status.
Mm.
And her new jumper. How cute is that?
Oh yeah,
Is it
this
Christmas?
Yep.
Late in the season, but
I love this.
Alright.
It's I wear this year round. It's very soft. It's from
that sounds
Kmart.
nice. Aw.
Brilliant. Okay, so that's all. Caroline, you can jump. Okay, bye.
All right. Recording stop.